Welcome to the Security Cafe podcast.
Welcome back to the Security Cafe, the podcast where we discuss cybersecurity with good coffee, questionable humor, and guests who, for their own good, know far too much about the cyber world. I'm your host Menno, and today we are tackling a hot topic: the spike in recent threats and a surprising number of massive data leaks we've seen in the past few months. Joining, as always, is our regular guest, Quint Ketting. Quint is the kind of guy who can smell a compromised account from 2 rooms away and somehow still manages to stay calm when everyone else is panicking. Quint's like the human equivalent of a SIEM. Loud, timely, and usually right. And today we've brought in reinforcements. We are joined by Max Heinemeyer, a true heavyweight in cyber threat intelligence and AI-driven defense. A man whose threat intelligence game is so strong that attackers probably check his activity logs just to make sure they're not caught yet. Together, these two are going to help us break down why data leaks are getting bigger and louder, which threat actors are driving the loudest waves of attacks, and what organizations should be doing right now to avoid starring in next month's headlines. So grab your coffee, log your accounts, and let's jump into the chaos. First off, Max, Quint, welcome back. No introductions needed, as I've just nailed them. Let's dive right into the topic. These data leaks. What is happening? Am I just being overwhelmed by the mainstream media, or is this really a big trend that we see a ramp up of data leakages?
Before we go there, Menno, can we do name and shame, or should we not go there?
We can, as long as you be nice.
Let's not do it.
As long as you be nice.
Let's not do it. Let's keep it. Let's keep it nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So is it a trend, or
is it a trend? I think it's definitely a trend. I don't know how you look at that, Max, but we already talked about it, I think, in one of the last episodes of this year together with Fred, when we mentioned as well, this was definitely the year of the data leakage. That was 2025. 2026 has just started, and it started with a I would say a few major headlines, and when I say major, I still am sometimes surprised in what we are hearing. Is there more attention from the media? I think yes, but that's not the cause. Yeah, so let's break that down in this conversation, because I think we both have some good insights on that. Don't you think so, Max?
Yeah, first, thanks for having me again, folks. It's a pleasure to be here and connecting with your listeners as well. It's a complex topic, right? Is it media attention? Is it a shift in tactics and procedures by the attackers? Is it different motivation? Have controls shifted? Look, I think there's some data points we can talk about, but in the end, it's a really complex topic. What I'm seeing is some stats that we see on threat intelligence tell us that ransomware attacks are going down and data leaks are actually going up. Yeah. And that is still being used for financial gain. So it's not just like data is being dropped and the threat actor disappears. There often is a ransom note or some sort of demand behind that. And I think this could be due part to the geopolitical situation and climate. So there might be a shift in threat actor behavior or threat actors being more prominent out there. That's speculation. What I care most about is not so much the threat actors behind this, but what it means for organizations and how we can systemically defend against that. So my big hunch is, and I'm keen to see what you think, Quint, I think attackers go where the money is and how they can make a buck. And these days, it is because controls have gotten better. I think it is harder than ever to fire off ransomware. Not everywhere, right? There's still really loads of pockets of bad behavior, but it's harder than 5 years ago, for example. And many attackers have shifted attention to SaaS solutions or identity theft, because then you don't have to have a huge network compromise with malware and stay in the loop and evade the SIEM and the MSSP and the network operations. You just bounce into the CRM in the SaaS environment, steal the data. It's probably not as well secured as the traditional environment, and off you go. So I think there's a combination of factors involved here, but that's my take.
Yeah, and I think I fully agree, Max. And then let's look as well at what the motivation would be, because you touched it already, right? So ransomware, most semi-mature and mature companies have protection against ransomware available. So it's harder to execute, not impossible, of course, but it's you have to do a lot of more effort in order to be successful there. And then it's about the gain, right? You can probably achieve the same gain with less effort if you just focus on, as you touched it already, the SaaS provider. You put everything in an application, your CRM database, your sales application with all your client records. And there you see the level of maturity, because it's it's somebody else's box, and then some companies might think it's in their environment, so I don't have to think about the protection at all. And I think that's something we need to probably peel the onion a little bit off in this episode as well, because that's where I think, we don't do name and shame. And I'm gonna mention the name of one of the parties that has been a lot associated as a SaaS provider with that, but I'm also gonna say it's not their fault. Yeah, if you put your data in somebody else's application, you need to make sure that the protection and the controls are in place. Yeah. And I'm talking about Salesforce. Yeah, Salesforce has been breached themselves earlier in 2025. And because of that, I think some of the threat actors, and we can name a few of them as well, are using the same methodologies, for their supply chain, basically. Yeah, they already know how to get access, and sometimes it takes something very simple. We always talk about the basics as social engineering. Yeah, you can train everyone. Yeah, but how good are these phishing messages these days with AI involved, especially with the data that is already out there for you to gain benefit of. So I got an email from, I thought it was my bank, and I say I thought because it wasn't my bank. It looked like my bank. It even had my name and some other things about me correct there. Yeah, so that could only be data that has been compromised before, that they're using to send these emails to. Of course, I was the one that clicked OK, and now all my money was gone. Yeah,
yeah, you did.
That's not true.
But what we actually say here, right, is that there's data that a company uses to do their business, right? CRM data, for instance, in Salesforce. They use Salesforce as an external provider. And for one of these cases that happened in the Netherlands in the past 2 weeks, right? There's a massive data leak based on access a single or two help desk employees of this company have, right? I'm worried about all these nice principles that we've thought out even before I was in cyber. 15, 20 years ago, we talked about least privileged, right? You don't give everybody the full access just to make life easy, right? That's something you work on. How can it happen that with all these principles we have, with all these legislative and compliance things, and this is about a telco, they are quite well regulated, also in the cyberspace. How I cannot grasp the notion that one or two help desk employees would have access to all that information, to 6 million records of people not even being clients anymore at this telco. How does such a, let's say, easy thing of least privilege, because I know Salesforce, you can use it to actually do that. How come that have we become too relaxed in the past years in setting these things up? What's happening?
Can I start on that?
Yes,
first, I want to take one step back before I get into that, Menno, just to your point, Quint, about social engineering becoming the new norm. I think the shift that has happened is that there's a process and procedure and a very mature toolkit with AI for attackers to replicate these type of attacks. It's not just, an elite hacking group that happens to speak the local language and is clever in crafting the emails and finds the right employee. This is a machine now. We've seen this time and time again. And I think that's what has changed. And that's why this threat vector has become so prominent and dangerous. And then it comes to your point there, Menno. How can this happen to big companies? Well, I think let's first be careful. They are the victims here, right? Maybe it's still to be seen what they've done and how things are being handled. But first and foremost, they need support and they need to be helped, I think.
Exactly.
So let's take a look at that. And it's easy to say, and we three have been shouting this for the last 20 years from the rooftops. We need least privilege and people need to be aware. But let's be honest, everybody's still getting hacked. So something is systemically not right. And I think it's easy to say, look, you can do these configurations in SaaS apps, but then you've got new help desk employees, and then maybe the manager is changing, and then there's an update in the SaaS solution, and then there's a legacy account, and then you have to migrate something. And in the migration, you need exceptions, and then maybe there's a different direction for management, and then you enable the AI agent. And what I'm saying is, it's really complex. So there's always going to be mistakes and edge cases, and that's what the attackers find and exploit, right? So we don't know the details about this, but maybe they've hit 15 other help desk employees and they had these privileges and they didn't get anywhere. I'm not saying that's the case, but I think there's always loads of complexity to these cases. But the problem is that we can't rely on the human angle anymore, right? It would be unfair to say these people weren't properly trained or if they only had least privilege. I want to take one step back from that. And I think it's actually the incentives for companies. I mean, you're right, Menno. If even a big telco doesn't get it right, what hope is there for small and medium businesses? I think there's a lot to be said about current legislation. NIS2 might play a role here of how we, in a systemic way, like as Netherlands, as Dutch companies, as European companies, push towards more resilience. And I don't want to drag this on a policy level. I know we want to speak about this hack in particular and some of the techniques, but I think it's important to see what needs to change on the bigger picture. So us three don't keep talking about this for the next 20 years because that's fun, exactly. But that's not where I want to end up.
Yeah, no. So in that sense, right? If we look at the human aspect of it, we've always stated again and again, it's not just humans. You need controls, right? And Quint just touched upon that as well. So what would be then what companies should do right now? Taking an example of this telco, and it's definitely not the only one. Maybe they've done it even better than other ones in preventing the next steps of these attackers or whatever, right? So indeed, without having the full details of these attacks, what can a company do right now in terms of controls that are maybe not too invasive in terms of processes and procedures? And it's like managing a city. It's not that easy as saying cars that go in and out, I just monitor them and then I know how much data goes out, right? Because a city has 1,000 ways out of the city. You can walk, you can take a bike, and you can go with a car. So just number plate recognition is not enough, etc. Right? So knowing the full scale of bigger companies, especially, it's not that easy. What should happen right now with these companies? What would you advise such companies, Quint?
So I'm taking it from a very different angle, as you probably. So you probably expect me to answer this from a technical point. You need to make sure you have this controls in place and that. But before you can do that, you need to start preparing, right? And I think that's where it goes wrong in your preparation. There's a phase that we always talk about. You need to understand, and you need to understand not only what type of a business you are, what impact your business or your organization application has to the society, but also what controls do I have already in place, and what controls do I need to have in place? Yeah, what is the delta? And this keeps changing because the landscape, the part of that understand game, it's not a game, but I call it a game, right? Because you can make it a fun exercise with your management team as well, to in a gamification way, to do this piece right, and in part of that is also, okay, what type of attacker, So for instance, the example we talk about this telco today, and we haven't even mentioned their name yet, because I think we can, us as defenders community, we can definitely do something to help this company as well, to make it less worse in the future for them. But it's also about monitor, so proper threat intelligence is also part of that. Which type of parties work in a certain way that could benefit from what you do, or the data that you possess, or the IP that you possess. And then you have to make considerable choices. Okay, how expensive is that? Because that's definitely part of that, right? It's about, okay, I always mention it's like high-end audio, I think you know a little bit about high-end audio as well, Max. Or guitars, high-end guitars. Let's make it more simplistic. The more expensive the guitar, I see a nice Les Paul hanging behind your back. The more expensive your Les Paul guitar is going to be, the less tonal differences somebody who doesn't know guitars well. So it's getting more and more expensive every time, but only the very specialist people will understand that tonal difference, right? And it's the same with that. So you have to, back to the cyber game, right? You have to know, okay, what the thing I want to protect, is it worth that much money? Or do I consider the consequence as a acceptable risk for me? That's all part of the preparation / understand game, So it's not an easy answer to just say, okay, guys, you need to have role-based access control in your SaaS application. You need to not just monitor who accesses what, but you also need to make sure that if somebody tries to access something, you can stop it, If somebody social engineers you, you get a link. And I would love to see those companies blocking that links at the moment somebody presses that. And there are technology available that can do that, but you have to make a considerable choice as an organization. Where do I put my money? Because you don't simply have all that money. There's only a very few companies in the world that have a lot of money to protect their business. But most companies, they can scream whatever they want to their board and they will not get it. Now, once there is an incident, I can tell you that money will become available. What's your stake on that, Max?
Oh, so much. I love the diminishing returns analog, the parallel you mentioned there with the guitar and, hearing less and less. I agree with that. I would take it a step further and say it's not just about preventative controls and detection controls and, incident readiness. That's all true. But the last point you mentioned there, Quint, I think that's where the crux is for me, the accountability and the responsibility in the companies. Because right now, like you say, if you got somebody screaming about cybersecurity, but the board doesn't listen, the top management doesn't listen, it doesn't change anything, right? It's just going to be some champions. If that person leaves or they don't get the funding, you can't push that through. I see that time and time again when I speak to CISOs. It's very frustrating. So at the moment, cybersecurity in most companies is just a risk, just a business risk. And if it's not worth investing, then you won't be as secure as you should be. And from a business perspective, that might be okay. But where I get upset and I think we need to change something as society is when there's more at stake than just the business, when it's a critical infrastructure company, when it's a critical business.
Exactly. It's about your impact to the society, right? And I think most especially commercial organizations don't factor that part in.
Yeah, Exactly. And
Sorry
why
to
should they?
interrupt you, by the way. Yeah.
No, that's good. Why should they, right? There's no incentive to do that. They are focused on driving profit, shareholder value, following their business roads. There's no current incentive to say, I'm going to cut my profit and lose some shareholder value, and maybe my stock goes down because I want to go for more cybersecurity. Why should they? There's no reason to do it in many cases, except for, there's exceptional people in their places and they really drive that for some level of agenda. But I think that's where accountability and responsibility comes in, because these critical companies, these important companies for society, I very broadly use this term, but I think all of us have ideas. This is transportation, this is food processing, this is schools and education, this is telcos, this is basic infrastructure, and like all of these things. I think we as societies need to do something to create these incentives, to hold top management accountable, to make sure this is not something which is pushed bottom up, but this needs to come top down. And that's why I'm a big fan, although there's rightful criticism of things like NIS2, which is, trying to take people and top management into accountability to make sure this is done, or, and this is the incentive, there's going to be hefty fines. And you, in Germany, in the German version at least, of the NIS2 regulation, you as a person can be made accountable, not as a company only, but you as a person in top management, if you don't follow these rules. So you're personally liable if you don't follow that. And I think that creates a very strong incentive. How it plays out, we have to see, but I think that's something we have to think about very carefully.
Yeah, and I have had this conversation with some boards as well, and I think I even mentioned it in some of the previous episodes, and it's quite funny because if you talk to a board and you talk exactly about that, because I'm 100% in agreement with you. It is about the responsibility and the accountability, and that has not always landed, despite the fact that there's now in most countries a NIS2 law available that mandates that. But if you then talk to board members, they are like, okay, I'm sitting here with my CISO, I'm sitting here with my CFO, my COO, and you have conversations about, you just bring up an example, and then the board, the chairman then goes to the CISO and says, hey, how do we do that? And then the second time when that happens, when I touch another topic, I'm like, okay, listen, your CISO, he's not in the books. You are, Mr. Chairman. And the fact that you have to ask your CISO 2 times now, how do we have this arranged? It tells me that you don't do your proper governance on this part of the game, whilst you are in the books and you are personal liable as well. And you probably don't act like that yet.
And to be honest,
I see this happen quite often, unfortunately. And when you mention that to board members, they actually thank you and say, oh my God, I didn't look at it that way.
I think one thing is awareness. The other is, and I wanted to mention that earlier, right? There needs to be more pressure to make companies incentivized to do better cybersecurity. But I think there's a flip side to it. If these companies are pushed to adopt better security, then we need to make sure that's affordable and easy to implement and easy to understand. So I think there is pressure on us as an industry and as vendors and consultants to amp up our game, right? I don't think... Look, when we go to CISOs, we speak the same language. But if this becomes a board-level topic and business-level topic, we can't be speaking about you need your encryption keys and tabletop.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I think most CISOs also, back to the previous topic, they know, they definitely know the situation by heart. Yeah, and the challenge that most of those guys and girls have is that that it's actually getting the right focus from the boards to actually do something about it. And that means that brings me to a total different game. That being a CISO is a very challenging role, of course, right? And
not just understanding what happens technically, but also you have to be able to talk to the board,
have to understand the company's direction by heart, right? Not just from a security perspective, but you need to know what security can actually break or make in terms of the direction that the business is heading towards to. And I believe there's quite some CISOs that are doing that, but there's definitely some CISOs that only take it purely from a technical perspective. And I don't think cybersecurity is something technical at all, especially not today anymore.
No. It becomes more and more a board topic, and I think that's a good point. So if I look at what Max just said, and we've lost Max, so I hope he will be back soon. What Max said on, getting the people and getting that awareness in, right? Is that also something from a risk perspective, right? If a board member who is responsible, who's accountable, if he or she is risk adverse as a person, right? So from a characteristic point of view, would we see more of those type of characteristics in boards, or would we see the other way around? We see people that easily take risks on board positions because it's then easier to just accept that accountability for what it is, and I'll see what happens when it happens.
Yeah, I love the question actually, but I think the answer is going to be taking me in a direction that you probably don't want me to. Because I look at that perspective as well from, okay, if somebody is risk averse, they probably are very likely not to want to spend any money either, instead of, so they're more likely to accept a certain risk.
It's a different type of risk.
The financial risk is probably more important to most of these type of people, and I can talk about that, right? I've been in leading positions as well, and sometimes you just your decision pattern is different, and I'm not probably a very risk averse person. I'm more the on the forefront of okay, let's do something. But it shouldn't be about a personality, right? It's about the incentive, and I love the word incentive that Max mentioned.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take this to another angle, because we always talk about penalties, but will penalties actually work? Why don't we incentivize people like you're teaching a dog how to sit and to give you a paw? What do you do? Menno, what do you do if the dog does that? You say to the dog, sit down. I'm not saying that the CEO of a company, we need to treat them the same as a dog, but it's about the motivation, right? Mm-hmm. Should we just think about penalizing them, or should we do something different?
Incentivizing them. It's the other way
exactly.
around. Yes. And that's a psychology thing, right? I think there's a way of treatment. It's 10 positive things compared to 1 negative, right? So if you do something, if you reward, incentivize 10 times it going right, you can break that by doing it twice on a negative side when stuff goes bad, and you punish the dog, let's say, right? So that probably gets into that psychology trend for risk as well. So that's I think with that, looking at the time, and we've lost our guest, so we have to come back to that later. I think he just shared with us that probably his security department didn't like uploading gigs of data, his face and audio to our podcast recording. So that's something to actually showcase. That's a good practice, right?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we will bring Max back.
Let's do that.
Yeah, so again, let's summarize, right? Data leakage. Yeah, it's not becoming the new norm. It's the new way how. How do we call it? Enemies of we have friendly nations and we have enemies of the West. Let's call it that way. Yeah, they're changing the tactics as well. Yeah, and part of that of that motivation, we didn't touch that yet, is also, what do? We talked about penalizing. So if you're no longer my friend because you've invaded another country or whatever is the consequence of, what do? We penalize those countries and the people that are living there, the businesses that operate in that. And the consequence of it, they need to find other ways to find money. Yeah, because they're not getting it through the channels that they had before, and that's a definite motivational factor for a threat actor, to gain, to change tactics in gaining money in other ways. Cyber, I've historically seen that in many events as well. In the past, it was ISIS that we saw in environment. We saw people from parts of Asia in there that had different motivational factors in companies, but it all had a common trend, right? It was all about gaining financial benefit to finance a war or to becoming economically stronger. And I think we need to all understand how threat actors work, how they think, and what their motivational factor is. That's also part of the preparation game. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and that's the piece to really understand that it's not just about controls. It's properly knowing yourself as a company, what direction you are going into, and that you want to go into.
Exactly, because
what your composure is.
The bad guys, they do a simple investigation, especially with we talk about LLMs. A lot of people don't probably know what those are. You probably call them AI. Yeah, with all the large language models, that's the LLMs. Yeah, the AI, they can do research so fast on your company or your organization. Exactly. Yeah. And what took months before is now available to you in seconds. Yeah. And with that data, it's easy to compromise some organizations, for sure.
All right, so we have Max back in play. The security department didn't like him uploading his face and audio.
Max forgot to buy flowers for Valentine's Day, I think, so he had to get them quickly.
It was really good. Yeah, I didn't announce this to my security team, and we normally don't use Riverside here. So me using that and uploading loads of data was quite suspicious, actually. But as we can see, after like 2 minutes, we could clear that, and here I am again. So I think that's a pretty good example of working practices.
Exactly. This is again, we mentioned about controls. Now this is a control that actually works, guys.
Yeah, really impressive, really good. So we just wrapped up Max on the podcast, Quint and myself. Let's just do the final round that we typically do. A thing to watch, a thing not to watch, a thing to read, etc. And maybe start with you, Quint.
Well, not to watch. I mentioned it in the last episode. I was starting a television show. I think it was on Sky Showtime. It is, yeah. It's called Hackerville, and it's Romanian German. And the first episode looked very promising, but the more I got into it, I did watch the entire show. I think it was awful, guys. Not proper research, I think, in the hacker community. So don't watch it. Don't waste your time. You don't have to watch it. You will not learn anything new from it.
Very good. And Max, something to watch or read?
Yeah, actually the opposite of what you there said, Quint. There's a Dutch movie being produced at the moment that's coming later this year, being released. It's called Fish _ at the moment, PHISH_ by the Dutch director Thijs Meubisse. And it is, I think, really cool. It's about hacktivists who spiraling into a game of cat and mouse with a black hat hacker and trying to combat phishing scams. And the cool thing about this is it's ultra realistic. If you guys have seen Mr. Robot, this cranks it up a notch.
And I love that show, indeed. It was really good.
And this cranks it up a notch. So there's a lot of cinematographic, like interesting plots and stuff like that. But for the hacking parts, actually, I've been involved as an advisor on this. So, I'm quite keen on this thing myself, but only because it's so realistic. So we actually stamped up virtual environments in AWS, did actual hacking, recorded Metasploit sessions, used the social engineering toolkit, have a version of Fraud GPT that's automatically creating phishing emails based on AI input. So if that's your kind of thing, I think that could be interesting to you. It's like,
so not just the hoodie and the.
So when will it be released, Max? Because I definitely am going to put it on my watch list, and I suggest that the people watching this show do as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's being in post-production at the moment. So just watch for the news. We might drop another note in the show notes at some point. There's going to be a premiere in Amsterdam in the cinemas later this year, I think around summertime probably. But, I'm just a humble hacking guy who's working on the back-end stuff. So I don't know about the fancy studio production that is being done on the front end.
So let's promise you this. When it is available in the latest episode at that time, we will definitely talk to our audience again about it to watch. Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that, right? A Dutch hacking movie. I've not seen that before, and a realistic one at that. So.
There was one, but I don't know that it was. There is one, and I think it's on Videoland. It's about
with the bus, right?
No, that they're hacking containers it's basically about drugs, transporting drugs. Yeah. But I don't know the title of it, but they used hackers in order to make sure that the containers are at the places where that people know this is the one that the drugs contains, and the border control don't know about it. I'll look it up. I'll put it in, I will mention it in one of our, I think that was also quite good, because what they did is they brought actually some antenna device, close to the harbor in order to, like you would do if you want to, access a network from a near distance as well.
Very cool.
Things like that were cool. in there. So they were advised properly as well.
So that's the Cyber Cafe as well. After the bell, we just have a nice conversation about things to watch, or the watch lists on Netflix and all the others. So
because that's what we do nice when we get home after a long day of work. Yes. We still are reading and watching a lot about cyber.
We dive into the cyber world, So really happy to have you guys on board again. Thank you very much for being here. And before everybody leaves, we are going to have a post-show version of a nice AI and security chat with Max and Quint. So stay here, just listen in, and we'll just dive into AI, cyber, new assistants, building new assistants, and it going exponentially crazy. That's coming up. Stay tuned. Yeah. It's a hard world out there, and for everybody listening, stay safe and take advice. Listen to these podcasts. Happy to have you on board. Listen to other podcasts. Listen to the experts in the field. The Quints and the Max shouting from the rooftops. Take their advice. Today is a hard day to be in IT and cyber. You have to do a lot. You have to look at everything and anything. It costs a lot of money. So if you are
buying
in
a new tool, unfortunately, it's not.
It's not that easy. Unfortunately not. All right. Thank you very much, Quint, for the listeners, and Max. Thank you, Max, for being here. We'll definitely have you on the next one to recuperate and to have your final thoughts on this one. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you later.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.